What Taylor Townsend experienced at the US Open isn't just on-court drama, it's racism. And I'll tell you why. Little recap though, in case you haven't seen it. So it's the second round of the US Open, and Jelena Ostapenko, former French Open champion and seeded 25 at the tournament, plays Taylor Townsend, who's the current world #1 in doubles, also a Grand Slam champion in doubles. Now, Jelena Ostapenko is from Latvia. Taylor Townsend is from America. She's African American. Taylor beats Jelena in straight sets. If you don't know tennis, that means Jelena didn't win a set. So they walk up to the net after the match, and Taylor's smiling. She's ready to exchange, the traditional, good games after the match. But Jelena's upset, and she's upset because of some unwritten rules in tennis. One, that when you start warming up for the match, you're supposed to start, in her head, at the baseline. Taylor's a doubles specialist, so she usually starts her warm-up to the net. Not a big deal, but Jelena, of course, makes a big deal out of it. Not surprising if you watched any of Jelena's matches. Anyways, there's another point in the match where Taylor hits a ball and it hits the net, but goes over. Taylor ends up winning the point. Now, a lot of people in tennis, when that happens and they win the point, they'll apologize. But it's not a requirement, it's not a rule. Especially when, it hitting the net doesn't decide the point. Taylor doesn't do that, Jelena gets upset. But it's what Jelena said after the match that's really problematic. Jelena says that Taylor has no class, no education, and that things only went the way they did because they're playing in Taylor's homeland. And that Taylor better be ready for when they play outside of the US. Accusing a black player, who's one of the greatest ambassadors for the sport at the moment, by the way, never had any history of being an unfair opponent, of having no class and no education? Are you serious, Jelena? That is so racist. And it's interesting because it's not an isolated thing. This is something we've heard before from certain players when it comes to certain players. Go all the way back to 1999 at the US Open, when Serena Williams won her first of 6 US Open titles. Martina Hingis gets upset with both Serena and Venus, and she starts making comments about Serena in particular all the way down through the years. First saying that Venus and Serena have a big mouth and they just talk a lot and that's who they are and it happened before, it's gonna happen again. Just completely generalizing them based off of stereotypes. And then going on later to say that Serena has no finesse in her game, no style in her game, it's just brute raw power. Denying the outright racism that Serena and Venus face at Indian Wells. Just so many examples of things that she said about Serena over the years. We've seen players try to check Arthur Fields, a black player from France, trying to act like he doesn't understand the rules of tennis. I mean, this whole thing of certain players, again, thinking that they're the gatekeepers of tennis tradition, and that any player who doesn't follow whatever rules they have in their mind that aren't in any rule book, that they don't have class, that they don't have an education. I mean, why do you jump straight to the education thing when it comes to certain players? Let's talk about it. Because again, Jelena's not particularly known as the Einstein of the tour. Nor is she known by anybody to be a particularly classy player. I mean, for Jelena Ostapenko, of all people, to think that she even has a sliver of a hope of authority to dictate whether or not somebody's classy, good night. And then the other piece of it, this whole homeland thing. I mean, that is another thing that has come up in tennis. I think a lot of players, whether they would admit it or not, are not happy with the idea that players are now finally receiving the benefits of belonging to the biggest tennis powerhouse in the world. And I say starting to because look at what Serena and Venus went through in the US. Again, earlier I mentioned Indian Wells, California, their home state, being called the N-word in the stands. Serena being booed after winning the final. Not to mention everything that Serena faced over the years at the US Open. In fact, Venus, who just made her 25th appearance in singles at the US Open, talked about how this experience of playing this year was the most support she's ever received at the tournament. In her 25th appearance. African American players are just starting to get that level of support at their home tournament. And you can tell that players like Jelena Ostapenko are rattled by that. To them, it's well, I don't have a major tournament in my homeland. Why does she get to have one? Why does she get to have an audience full of people cheering her on against me? Well, if you thought it was bad this time, good luck next time you play in New York. 'Cause you really messed up this time, Jelena. Wrong road. Not to mention, and this is the last thing. Okay, the US Open this year is dedicated to Althea Gibson. If you don't know, she broke the color barrier in tennis. First black player to win a major title. Inspiration to pretty much every black tennis player that came after her. For you, Jelena, to say what you said on this particular year, when we are celebrating the breaking of the color barrier in tennis. This whole thing of players feeling like they're the gatekeepers of tennis, like, it needs to stop. It's 2025. I mean, shoot, I experienced it playing in high school. Like, just on my little high school level, like, everybody knew I was huge on integrity. Still am. Like, I will give opponents certain calls if I'm not 100% sure, even if I'm 99% sure. And yet and still, this one kid's mom couldn't help herself but accuse me of cheating because she couldn't believe that I was a better player than her son and that I was voted captain of the team. And that's what it goes back to. Why does Taylor get to beat me? Why does Taylor get to have a crowd full of people rooting for her? Why does Taylor think that she can decide what unwritten rules she subscribes to? Because she's the baddest on the court, and who's gonna check her? You? Well, look how that's going. The whole world is flaming you right now. So next time you decide to step to a world number one like that, really think about whether or not it's worth it. Because now you got a whole bunch of egg on your face. And let me tell you, we will never forget the way you treated Taylor. So congrats, Taylor. Keep shining on them. Keep winning. Keep being the baddest. And yeah, I hope everybody in New York goes out to support Taylor in her matches. Show Jelena how much we back her in her homeland.